Well, thank you, Dorothy, for that wonderful introduction, and thank you, Ted, for opening up your beautiful home. I really appreciate it. Love your name. And there we go. And so pleased that we have PDSM members here as well as Malibu Democratic Club. So thank you for inviting me to speak, and I'll talk about three subjects, and then you can ask me any questions that you want on any issue. I'll talk about climate change, and then national security, and then veterans. So in terms of climate change, as you all know, it is the one issue that can kill us as a species if we don't do something about it. And it's why the first bill I wrote and introduced in Congress this year replicates California's AB 32, of which I was a co-author, and makes it nationwide. It also puts in a renewable portfolio standard of 33% nationwide. And it's clear to me that in a Republican-controlled Congress, that bill is not going to pass this year. But it does set the standard for where we want to go when we do take back control of the House. And you're seeing some pretty strong movement in climate change. So you've got organizations that you normally would not call progressive that have come out saying climate change is a problem, it's caused by humans, we need to do something about it. So you got the Catholic Church, right, saying that. You also have the U.S. military. They have looked at this issue, they concluded it's a national security problem, and they're urging action on climate change. And as we stand here today, Exxon believes in climate change. They believe it's caused by the burning of fossil fuels, and they support a price on carbon. They don't say that very loudly, which is why I go around and say it for them. But it's on their website. It is something that they believe now. We are upset that it took them 3 decades to come to this conclusion after denying it for most of those 3 decades. And it's one reason I did author 2 letters, one to the U.S. Attorney General asking for an investigation into ExxonMobil. Their scientists confirmed in the 1970s that climate change was happening and it was going to have catastrophic effects if we don't do something about it. Their executives essentially went exactly the other way. They started funding climate change deniers. One of their prior CEOs went around using his position as CEO to deny climate change, and they, in my opinion, set back humanity for about 3 decades. When the tobacco companies did that, they were sued by the federal government under RICO statutes for knowing about the science behind tobacco, denying it, and then selling their product. To me, that's what ExxonMobil did. Actually, it was worse than that. Not only did they know climate change was happening and then they publicly denied it, privately they were taking actions to benefit from climate change. So they were actually spending money to buy up land in the Arctic, basically, because they knew it was going to start melting, which was going to make drilling easier. So you had, this amazing, it's beyond hypocrisy. I don't even know really what to call it. It'd be as if the tobacco companies start buying up plots of land to build cemeteries on because they knew their cigarettes were going to kill people. That's what ExxonMobil was doing. So we got the U.S. Attorney General requested them to look into it. I also sent a letter to the Securities and Exchange Commission. So in America, a lot of times, companies lie, but you cannot lie on securities filings. And not only can you not lie, you can't even omit a material fact on these filings. And it's my belief that ExxonMobil was not accurately disclosing the risks of climate change in their securities filings. It's not a very high standard to meet. So you've seen the SEC go after companies that have said far less fraudulent things and omitted far less than facts than ExxonMobil has in this case. So I feel pretty good that when the SEC looks into this, they will in fact go after ExxonMobil. And then I sent a third letter. By the way, all these letters were signed with other members of Congress as well. I wrote them, but I got the other folks to sign on. But anyways, the third letter I sent, there's evidence from a report by the Union of Concerned Scientists that other oil companies did similar things. So we sent a letter to the 6 major oil companies and asked their CEOs basically, what did your company know about climate change? How did you disclose it? that you fund climate deniers and so on. And I'm very pleased that New York Attorney General has now opened an investigation onto ExxonMobil, as well as Peabody, another major oil company. And we're going to keep pushing this issue. Paris is pretty darn significant for the movement. Very pleased that all the countries of the world basically acknowledge climate change, said it's a problem, and now they want to reduce carbon pollution. By the way, I talk about climate change here in California. It resonates with people here in California. Everywhere else, I use the words carbon pollution. That tends to resonate better, for example, in Alabama and other places. And there are benefits from reducing carbon pollution, one of which is you also generally get better air quality. There's lots of these co-benefits that happen, which is one reason China is now very interested in climate change. They've now issued 2 red alerts in Beijing in the last few weeks, meaning people literally just don't go to work. Their kids don't go to school because you can't breathe the air. It is so completely awful. And you now have the 2 leading economies in the world, China and the U.S., working together on climate change. So that's a pretty strong shift in just a matter of a few years. And my belief in politics is that everything is impossible. Everything is impossible until it happens, right? So if you look at what happened 15 years ago, and you thought, or it would have say to me, hey, we're going to have gay marriage in all 50 states, you'd think I was smoking marijuana. But that happened. And it's because the public shifted their opinion over that time to a point where elected officials could no longer ignore it. And so my belief is that the public has now shifted their opinion, and pretty soon the elected officials can no longer ignore this. So you actually have 10 members of Congress this year who are Republicans that did something pretty significant. They signed onto a resolution that basically said climate change is happening, humans are causing it, and we need to do something about it. And so I do think with every passing year we get more and more momentum, and that sooner or later, actually sooner rather than later, we're going to get significant climate change legislation to pass. Happy to answer any additional questions on that. Second, on national security, we do know that in the last 2 months we've had an airliner get blown up, apparently by terrorists. We've had civilians massacred in Beirut, in Paris, in Mali, and then recently in San Bernardino. The investigations are still ongoing, but the one thing we do know is that none of these terrorist attacks were caused by Syrian refugees. And it was sort of bizarre to me last month when the House of Representatives, in a very knee-jerk reaction, did a response which essentially passed a bill that I voted no on, that was going to essentially ban Syrian refugees from coming to the United States. And it's strange to me and completely idiotic to scapegoat a group of people that had nothing to do with these terrorist attacks. I am now 20 years in the military. I served active duty for 4 years. I've been in the reserves now 16 years. Actually 2 weeks ago, the Air Force selected me for promotion to colonel. So military strategists from Sun Tzu till today, from all our generals, what they'll teach is that to defeat your enemy, you need to know your enemy. And our enemies are ISIL and Al-Qaeda and other terrorist organizations. They are not Syrian refugees fleeing these terrorist organizations. And if you look at the facts, last year the U.S. let in about 2,200 Syrian refugees. Half were children, a quarter were senior citizens. If we can't vet them, they don't come in. They go through an 18 to 24 month vetting process. So it was totally bizarre that we would scapegoat this group of people. And I'm very pleased that after the House of Representatives actually sat back, thought about it, they realized what a stupid thing that was. And if you look at their most recent bills that passed Congress in terms of the omnibus, it did not include anything on Syrian refugees. The other point that I want to make is when I was active duty in the Air Force, I worked on Operation Pacific Haven. It was a humanitarian operation that went in and extracted thousands of Kurds, Iraqis, out of northern Iraq, because at the time Saddam Hussein was going to go in and kill them. So we took these Kurds out of northern Iraq, we flew them to Guam, where I was stationed, and we had to vet them and to make sure they were secure, and then we flew most of them to the United States. To this day, the Kurds love the United States. They are one of our main allies in the Middle East. So there is a number of strategic reasons also why we have Syrian refugees come to the United States. And just in our history, right, America was started because of people fleeing religious persecution. And it was completely, not only just bizarre, it was un-American for us to scapegoat this group of people. And hopefully, other than what presidential candidates or Republican sides say, hopefully this issue dies down. And then, thank you. And then last thing on veterans. So I have the West LA VA campus in my district. As some of you may know, it's been somewhat dysfunctional for decades. We now have a new VA Secretary, Bob McDonald. We have new elected officials. And a lawsuit was settled with plaintiffs from ACLU and others. And there's now a master plan that's going to revitalize the VA campus. It's going to result in more housing for homeless veterans as well as supportive services. I have a bill that I've introduced along with Senator Feinstein. The language is identical in both houses that will allow the VA to basically work with what are called enhanced use leases to build this housing for veterans. We had a hearing on this bill last month, which is very exciting because in a Republican-controlled Congress, if they don't want to do anything, you just don't hear anything about your bill at all. The fact that they had a hearing means that they're interested in getting it moved, and so hopefully we'll get that through. I am very proud that in my first year I did have 3 laws signed. 2 of them do deal with veterans. One got $35 million to West LA VA for seismic retrofits. A second reauthorized a VA committee on homeless veterans. And then a third has to do with the economy. It reauthorized a qualified reporting that happens every quarter. It's called a QFD. It's something that private and public sector folks rely on. So hopefully we'll be able to move forward in both the West LA VA as well as some of the economic things that have been happening. And with that, happy to answer any questions you may have. And then since you asked about the omnibus, this last week Congress passed 2 bills. One were tax extenders. So there were some things in there that I liked. There were a lot of things in there that I didn't like, and it was going to, in the words of Leader Pelosi and Steny Hoyer, explode the deficit and essentially squeeze government in the future, because it was a huge amount of tax breaks that were going to result in accounting that was going to make it so that we would have much less discretionary money to spend in the out years. So that's one reason I voted against it. And then you had the omnibus spending package, that there are a lot of good things in there as well. I only voted against it because there are 2 things I just couldn't get past. One is it lifted the 40-year ban on crude export, and I just couldn't do that. And second, it had in there, this is, keep in mind, a spending bill, 130 pages of cybersecurity text that essentially, I think, roll back some of the things we were trying to do in terms of privacy protections, and it's basically going to give more information of yours to the NSA, and that's not something that I could support. So that's the reason I voted against it. I was one of 18 Democrats, by the way. So with that, happy to answer questions that you may have. Thanks.